My name is Nick Baigent and I'm originally an economist, so I've kind of crossed over from economics into philosophy and enjoying every minute of it. But that conditions the sort of issues in philosophy that interest me. I'm particularly interested in rational choice theory, and recently I've become interested in the connection with identity, the individual agent identity, as it's called. This is a long-standing interest of philosophers. It's connected with our views about moral responsibility and also with rational choice, of course. But there's one aspect that has really grabbed my attention in recent years, and that's the connection between identity and violent conflict. Let me give you a few examples of violent conflict situations that you almost certainly have heard of. For example, Catholic and Protestant in Northern Ireland, Sunni, Shia and possibly Kurds in Iraq and elsewhere in the Middle East. And with that alignment also in some countries that are currently undergoing what's called the Arab Spring. Then there is Muslim and Hindu, for example, in India, Tutsi, Hutu in Rwanda. In the breakup of the old Yugoslavia, we had Catholics, Orthodox Christians and Muslims at one point or another aligned against each other. Now, what you'll notice about that list, and it could be a much, much longer list, including, for example, Manchester United and Manchester City, or the many other football clubs, Tottenham and Arsenal in my own area. What strikes you about the way I've just described these is that these violent conflicts are all described in terms of a single identity. Now, what's wrong with that picture? A little thought will make it very obvious, but let me give you two real examples. In Northern Ireland, the women's movement played a very important role in bringing the conflict to an end. So we have their gender identity, which cuts across religious identity. Women identifying with each other as women, but also probably as mothers and carers and so on. Now consider Daniel Barenboim's East-West Orchestra in Israel-Palestine. This is an orchestra consisting of young, in fact youths, Palestinians and Jews. They play together, they practice together, and they perform concerts internationally, but also in the disputed areas. These young musicians certainly have the two identities involved in the conflict, but also they have another identity, those of musicians. Musicians in an orchestra have to be sensitive to each other and support each other. So here we have an identity that is more conducive to peaceful activity and runs against those identities that could play a role in violent conflict. So I'm particularly interested in rational choice theory in bringing in not just single identity, that's already been done, but in my research I'm interested to bring in multiple identities into rational choice theory and bring that to bear on some situations of violent conflict. What I like about this, what really turns me on about it, is that it raises deep philosophical issues about identity, about agency, and indeed about rationality. Rationality, after all, presumably is relative to identity. So there are those deep issues there, but it also is directly relevant to some very important activities such as peacekeeping, conflict prevention or bringing existing conflicts to an end, and even in post-conflict situations. For example, in Bosnia-Herzegovina right now, there's this sort of spurious peace. For example, in education, There are Muslims, there are Orthodox, Serbs, sharing school buildings, but in fact teaching the children separate history lessons. And this hardly conduces to multiple identities. This rather supports the single identities that were involved in the conflict in the first place. So I feel that an understanding of multiple identities in human activity can help in a lot of what otherwise might be very unfortunate situations and address some very deep philosophical issues.